And now for something completely different. Welcome, one and all, teachers, students, distance learners at home, to Pond Live. We are coming to you from Camp Heidelberg Pond at Camp Heidelberg Outdoor Education Center. Now, Waterloo region is situated on lands that are deeply connected to Indigenous peoples who historically and currently live here. These groups include the Neutral or Attawandaron peoples, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee peoples. Our region is situated on the Haldimand Tract, land promised to the Six Nations, also known as the Haudenosaunee, for which rent is owing. This includes 6 miles of land on each side of the Grand River. Now, we are going to be engaging in some land-based learning here today, and so we also want to acknowledge with respect the creatures that we wish to learn from today. We give our gratitude to the insects and the animals with respect for what they have to teach us. Now, I'd like to say a few words about our COVID protocols. Today we will not be wearing masks unless we have a need to do a close-up. Our camera is on a boom, and so we're going to be distancing 2 meters, and we are outside. We are encouraging students at home and teachers at their desk to participate in the chat. We have a moderator. Joe Bell is our chat moderator today, and we are going to try to collect as many questions as we can from the chat and answer some of those questions at the end. Answers to questions that we can't make it to during the live stream will be posted in the frequently asked questions on our website. Thank you to students who submitted lyrics to our song lyric challenge. Sean McCammon is going to be singing verses and lyrics submitted by students at the end of this broadcast around 10:45, so stay tuned for that. Now, I'd like to introduce our cameraman. Thank you, Dave Pope, for being our cameraman today. My name is Nathan Manty, also known as Nature Nate. I'm an outdoor educator at Blair Outdoor Education Center, and I'm excited to be your host today. So, let's find out a little bit about who's here at the pond. Let's take it to Levi. Hello, Levi. Can you introduce yourself?
Hey, Nathan. Yeah, my name is Levi Moore. I run the Wrigley Corners Outdoor Education Center. I'll be at the action desk today, and I'm going to be keeping our list. So these are all the different creatures we hope to catch today, and check in with us at the end to see how many we caught.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Levi. Let's go over to Sean McCammon here. Sean, tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Sean McCammon. I work at the Laurel Creek Outdoor Center, and we've got a couple ponds at Laurel Creek, but every pond is different, so I'm excited to see what I can catch in here today.
Fantastic. You'll see the beautiful sunlight on the pond here at Camp Heidelberg. And the outdoor educator who normally teaches field trip programs here at Camp Heidelberg is Al Woodhouse. Hello, Al.
How you doing today, Nathan?
I'm doing great.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the pond at the Camp Heidelberg Environmental Education Center. This property is owned by the KW Optimist Club. It's a wonderful place to be exploring on school trips when they're around, and an amazing pond with a lot of variety. In fact, I should quickly show you a technique that you can use for catching animals at a pond if you have a pond around your house and have permission to do that.
That's great, Al. Let's see how you use that net.
Yeah, a lot of the life lives right around the edge of ponds where a lot of the plants are found. So typically I bounce my net gently up against the side of the pond, and when I get to one end I turn my net around. I've created a current of water in one direction, and kind of sucking the animals off the plants, and do a couple more turns. I lift up my net, and wow, a lot of plants in there. I can see a little bit of movement from animals. If I bring it over and just put it on the ground here, I can spread it out. Here's a lesser water bug. There's a spider that's crawling on my finger now.
Fantastic. Now we're going to be keeping a tally throughout the broadcast today. So Levi at the easels by the action desk is going to be marking off these creatures as we find them. So Al, can you repeat that? Lesser water bug.
Lesser water bug, fisher spider. There's a nice orb snail here. A couple lesser water bugs. We've got
fantastic. It looks like
diving beetles.
It looks like Sean has got something exciting. Let's take a look and see what Sean has in his net.
All right, so normally when these animals are caught, a lot of times their first instinct is just to freeze. That might be a good strategy for them to not get eaten by something. And so when you look in the net, a lot of times you might think, there's nothing in there. But if you take the time just to spread things out and watch closely for movements, all of a sudden you'll start to see things start to move around.
My goodness, Sean, I do see some things moving
Yeah,
around there.
we've got a lesser water bug there, like alcott. Oh, a big orb snail. And here's a neat one. This one is called a back swimmer, and this one, maybe we should take a closer look at this one. Maybe I'll take this one over the action desk. Let's have a look at this.
That sounds great, Sean. Now, while you're taking that over, I am going to mention we had a lot of questions submitted by students using the Google form on our website. So I'm going to be asking questions that were submitted by students today. And Sean, I've got a quick question for you before we go to that back swimmer. Sean, this question is from student SM in Mrs. Foster Cohen's class at North Lake Woods. The question is, in small aquatic ecosystems, such as ponds, what is the most common and what is your favorite animal to find?
Well, every day is different. I mean, that's what makes ponds exciting, is that you can find different stuff every day. What do I like to find? Certainly for students, the thing that causes a lot of excitement is crayfish. And so I'm not sure if we're able to catch crayfish in this pond, but crayfish is certainly an exciting one. It's kind of rare, but occasionally we get a giant water bug.
A giant water bug?
Yeah.
And you're holding your fingers like that. Are they really that big?
That is your life-size giant water bug. They can fly. I saw one this summer flying around lights in the city.
They don't bite, do they?
They do bite, and so sometimes they're called toe biters. I've never heard of anyone getting bit on the toe by a giant water bug, but certainly one that causes excitement if you catch it, and a little bit tricky to handle. So that would be an exciting one to find today too.
Amazing, thank you, Sean. All right, Levi, show us what you have here at the action desk.
All right, so if we can zoom in here, this is the back swimmer. I'm gonna pick it up. It's a pretty fabulous little creature. Has many adaptations.
Levi, is this an insect?
This is an insect.
That's kind of surprising because I can only see two legs there.
There are two huge legs. Those are their back legs. They're covered in hair, and those hairs actually help them propel themselves through the water. There are 4 other legs on the front, and those they use to capture their prey. These are carnivorous animals. They have a needle-like mouth. When they capture their prey with their front legs, they stick that needle right into the body cavity of their prey, inject digestive juices and enzymes and fun things like that, and then they use that same straw-like mouth to suck up all the good stuff inside.
What kind of creatures do they like to prey on?
They'll eat anything smaller than themselves, so that could be any kind of aquatic invertebrate. It could be a tadpole, small fish.
Wow, amazing.
Lovely creatures.
Fantastic. Let's go over to Al. It looks like he's gotten something in his net and he's put it in the tray here. Al, what do you have?
This is one of my favorite pond animals. It's called the caddisfly larva. I knew I saw a movement in my net, but it took me a second to realize. Right there. So initially it looks like leaves, but if I turn it into the light a little bit, you can see there's a tube. This is called the caddisfly larva. What it does is it has the ability to spin really sticky spiderweb-like material around its own body, and then it takes materials from the pond bottom and it chews them to the right size and shape, and then it glues it to its own body for camouflage and protection. Right now it's in kind of a caterpillar-like form, so it is an insect, and it's a herbivore, meaning it eats only plants.
Al, I'm sorry, I have to stop you. Did you say it glues them?
Yeah.
What is it used for glue?
It can spin sticky silk from its mouth part and uses it almost like tape. Almost like an underwater tape.
And what kinds of materials might it use to make that protective case?
That's an awesome question, Nathan. In this pond, we get a lot of leaves, and so it takes advantage of anything it can find. So with the abundance of leaves, with all the leaves that have fallen throughout this autumn, it's taken the leaves and, there we go, there's a nice dogwood leaf on the top of that one. It's taken the leaves, glued them to its body, but we do have some sandier sections of the pond where sometimes they'll use sand and small gravel to wrap themselves up. If there are areas where, around the ponds maybe where you live, if there are pine trees, they'll use pine needles and spiral them around their body. So they're really opportunistic in the way that they can use any material that they find to make their cases. So this is for camouflage and protection, otherwise it's kind of like a tasty morsel on the bottom of the pond.
And you said this is a caddisfly larva?
Caddisfly larva.
Does it fly?
In the adult form it does. The adult form looks very similar to a moth in many ways, but it does hold its wings kind of in a triangle above the body. But this is the larval stage, the caterpillar type stage, if we want to call it that. Then it forms a pupa, and then eventually it floats up to the surface of the water and flies away as the adult. One really neat thing about this, perhaps for those secondary students out there are animals in this pond that are called indicator organisms. They tell us something, they indicate something to us. And in this case, caddisfly larvae are intolerant to pollution, meaning they can't handle any amount of pollution in the water. So the fact that we're finding, and I think I saw another one in here too, the fact we're finding caddisfly larvae within the pond, that's a really good sign that this is a very healthy environment for not only them, but the rest of the creatures found there.
That's fantastic.
I'm just going to release this one maybe down to the pond.
Amazing.
I'll put it near some of the plants that it likes to crawl on. And it was hiding from us most of the time, but it will come out, stretch out its legs, and walk around the plant material looking for food.
That's amazing. Now this is such a beautiful view of the pond. Let's just take a moment to take a look at the cattail there, an important plant in the pond habitat, and a beautiful sun coming over the treetops. Looks like Sean is over there. Sean, you have something?
Yeah.
Oh, let's take a look. Sean looks very excited. Sean is normally a fairly subtle man, so this is a high degree of excitement from Sean here. What do you have?
All right, well, you know how I said you should put your net down and watch closely for movements? Well, this one is not hard to find. So I did catch a crayfish here. You know, a lot of students want to know if you can pick up a crayfish. If you get it right on the back there behind the claws, you can pick it up without it being able to reach behind and pinch you. And you know, a lot of students think this is going to be a big predator in the pond, that it's got these big claws and it's going to catch things. But crayfish, really, they're omnivores, and probably their favorite food would be something dead in the pond, a dead animal. They'll eat dead plants, they'll snip live plants and eat those. And I think it's actually quite rare that you would find a crayfish hunting down a live animal. From my experience, it takes an animal to swim into their claws for them to kind of catch that. So, neat animal. Crayfish are called decapods. For those of you playing at home, how many legs would a decapod have?
Great question, Sean. The question is, how many legs would a decapod have? If you have an answer, let's put it in the chat, and we'll come back with an answer for that one. Now, Sean, it does look like a lobster, but you're telling me that is not a lobster?
Well, related. So lobsters live in salt water, and crayfish are in fresh water, and, you know, very closely related. Both decapods, both have 10 legs like crabs and shrimp.
Sean, I just saw it scooch backwards.
Yeah, if it wants to move quickly, pulling its tail backwards is a pretty good instinct. So normally, if they're not afraid, they're walking around in the pond forwards, and if they want to move quickly, to pull water back with their tail can help them move backwards very quickly. It also keeps their claws pointed towards the thing that might be dangerous to them.
Fantastic. So grade 4s who are watching right now, we could say that's a very excellent behavioral adaptation, would you say?
Adaptation, yeah. Instinct that they have that helps them to survive.
Amazing. Okay, let's take it over to the action desk. What do you have, Levi, for us to look at the action desk?
Well, I want to say thanks, Sean, for catching the crayfish. So we've got crayfish marked. For anybody following along at home, if you've got a list and you're trying to keep track, these are the things we've caught so far. Al caught a water scorpion for us, so let's mark that down and come on over. Let's get a good close-up on this one. Water scorpions are not scorpions. Let's get that out of the way right away. They're long and they're slender, and that is important to note. That is one of their key adaptations. A water scorpion, I'm going to take it out and let everybody take a closer look.
Are you sticking your fingers in there with that creature?
I'm going to pick it up, yes. So very long, very slender, has long skinny legs, long raptorial grasping arms, and this long skinny thing at the back. And that's a snorkel. That adaptation is how it breathes underwater. It's actually two curved tubes that it can push together and then stick the end up through the surface of the water and breathe. So I'm going to put it in the...
And so you're telling me that it breathes using a snorkel, but that's at the back end of it.
That's right. It breathes through its butt, basically, and that's probably one of its most distinctive characteristics. The long, slender shape makes this another indicator species, not an indicator of water pollution, but an indicator of the habitat that it occupies. If we pan over to the cattails, you can see that the cattails are long and tall and slender. In this case, under the water as well. These water scorpions blend in very well.
Fantastic. This is a great time for us. A question submitted by student initials AN in Madame Holtby's class, who's a distance learner, and she has a couple of questions. How did all the insects and critters get into the pond to begin with? And is the pond polluted? How can I help stop ponds from getting polluted?
Oh, those are all excellent questions. A lot of these invertebrates can fly. So even the water scorpion has wings folded up, and it can fly if it needs to. The giant water bug, the backswimmer, the caddisfly larva, when it's an adult, it can fly as well. So a lot of these aquatic invertebrates can fly. Some invertebrates are carried on the legs and feet and the underside of waterfowl. So there's a variety of ways that animals make it into the pond. I think one of the other questions was, is this pond
polluted? How can I help make sure that ponds near me don't get polluted?
Right, yeah, very good question. And there's a variety of things you can do. Maybe the first is be there, be observant, go to your pond regularly, and make note of what the things are that live in that system. Keep track of that stuff, so that if you ever see changes, you'll know that the pond is being polluted. Those animals as indicators will tell you the story of all those things you can't measure. The pollution could be a change in temperature, but it could also be some type of heavy metal, or it could be salt, it could be something that's running off of somebody's lawn. Those are things you can't see. So by being observant and making sure you know what lives there, and if those things disappear, that would be the first sign of something going wrong. After that, probably want to talk with your parents, maybe write a letter to someone, maybe talk with staff from the Grand River Conservation Authority. There are local advocates for water quality.
Fantastic, great advice. Thank you very much, Levi. All right, let's come on over here and
Check this out. Check this out.
Yeah, what do you have, Al?
I'm gonna need the camera over here pretty closely. Look at the ground. Forget the pond for a second. Check. I'll point with my net. See this here, and these here, and this here, and here. Turtles.
Amazing. We had so many students asking questions about turtles. In fact, I can't remember the name of the student right now, but somebody asked, are the baby turtles okay? Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark.
You're setting me up here, aren't you? Okay. Well, these are the turtle nests of painted turtles. Turtles don't actually nest in the water. They need dry ground to nest on, and usually a sandy gravelly habitat, which is exactly what we have here. Are they okay? Not these ones. These ones have actually been predated, meaning a predator, an animal that will eat the eggs, has found the nest, dug the nest up, and eaten all of what would have been the developing turtles. So the eggshells are empty, they were on the outside, so these ones didn't make it. In fact, very, very few of the eggs that a girl turtle, puts into the ground will actually become a young turtle to make it down to the pond. A very, very small number in comparison to the number of eggs. So this is most often how we see things. Predators of skunks, raccoons, foxes, you name it. Wild turkeys on this property. They'll dig them up, they'll eat them. But what you have to remember is this is a pretty important food source for that type of animal at that particular time of year. So, I in the past have not protected the eggs, and this results, but if I can maybe draw your attention behind me for a second, you see this cagey-like thing. Over the past, I guess it's now 3 years, because snapping turtles, remember those are painted turtle eggs that we saw, but snapping turtles are a species at risk. They are struggling to survive, and most of the reasons is simply because of human interaction, roads being built for their habitat, these types of things. So we have a cage that we can actually put over top of the turtle nest if we see the female laying eggs. So when she disappears back to the pond, and turtles don't actually care for their young, there's no parental care. She will lay the eggs, bury them up, and back to the pond she goes, and whatever happens to the nest and the eggs is whatever happens. So I've decided that I will cage the snapping turtle eggs. I will put the cage on top to prevent predators from trying to dig them up, simply because they are a species at risk. They need our help. We need to do something to help them. But
will the baby turtles be able to get out?
they do. I leave a little spot in the bottom where when the eggs hatch, they can just make their way down the pond. So there'd be a little gap just like this here. You can see I put my net pole underneath it. And the turtles, my goodness, they're only about the size of a toonie. They can easily crawl out. And like, who doesn't love turtles, eh?
Oh, man.
All that chocolate and caramel, that flavor combination, I love it.
Oh, Al, you're killing me. Now, student Jay in Mr. Helmink's class at Winston Churchill wants to know, why do turtles like to swim in the pond and why don't they freeze in winter? And I also have to ask a question from student HB in Mrs. Webb's class at Blair Road Public School. How do frogs and turtles sleep for the winter at the pond?
Okay. You might have to remind me of that second question in a second. Actually, remind me of the first question.
Why do turtles like to swim in the pond?
Well, who doesn't?
And why don't they freeze in winter?
Okay, so they like to swim in the pond because if you're grade 4 or further and you've talked about adaptations, these are features of living things that help them to survive better within their habitat. Turtles are well suited for a water environment. This is where they get their protection, this is where they get their food, everything they need for survival. So they like to swim for that reason. They'll often come out and bask on logs to bring their body temperature up using the sun. So they don't eat and create body heat by digesting their food like humans do. So they'll bask, they'll absorb the heat of the sun, and that will allow them to do all their digestion and movement, things like that. So they're well suited for a pond environment. How do they breathe? Was that the second part?
That was the second question. Or no, how do they sleep for the winter?
How do they sleep? That's a equally good question. This is going to get a little technical. At the bottom of the pond, the water never freezes. So the heaviest water gets is 4 degrees Celsius. That water sinks to the bottom. As the water gets colder, it actually starts floating towards the top a little bit until it becomes ice. So the water at the bottom of the pond never freezes unless it freezes from top all the way down, in which case all the life or most of the life in the pond would be dead anyway. So they're able to sleep in the pond, at the bottom of the pond, and often they tuck themselves in the mud a little bit because the water never freezes at the bottom. How are they able to breathe? That's maybe even a cooler question. They have very thin layers of skin around the inside of the leg, and they can actually have oxygen, which is what we breathe in to survive. The oxygen goes through the skin into the blood vessels. Those things that carry blood around our body also carries blood around their body. So the oxygen passes into the blood vessels, and the carbon dioxide, which we breathe out with our lungs, it passes back out into the water. It's a really unique system. The snapping turtle is pretty well known for having a cloaca, which is the pore, an opening in the body where they do their business, if you know what I mean. They can actually absorb oxygen through that mechanism too. So kind of like a butt breather also, as I heard.
My goodness, I think that there's kind of a theme developing here. Well, I better stop you there, Al.
Hopefully not too heavily.
Let's take a look at another outdoor educator here before we go too far down that path. Sean, I see you've got a net full of something over there.
Yeah, let's have a look. All right, so again, hard to see what's in here until things start moving, but here we have a darter fish. Put that on the list, Levi.
Right. Awesome.
Here we have a water scavenger beetle. That's a good one. And here we have, all right, so this is a neat one. A lot of people don't know that dragonflies are born in the water. So this is a young dragonfly, a dragonfly nymph, and they can spend a few months in the early stages in the water, or they can sometimes spend a few years living in the water. The crayfish that we had before, not a big predator, but the dragonfly nymph is a predaceous hunter in the pond. And if you want to Google something neat, Google slow motion videos of dragonfly nymphs hunting, because they have a long lower lip, and that lip will shoot out and grab animals, and then they eat them. So they're pure carnivores in the nipple stage and as adults. And another neat thing we might be able to see here, David, is that their gills are in their abdomen. So the gills are inside of them. So they have to pull water inside them and then push it out in order to breathe. And this also acts as a propelling mechanism that they can swim by kind of jet propulsion by pushing water out of their abdomen. And so if we put this guy or girl into the water here, maybe you'll see some jet propulsion going on here.
While
All
we're
right.
watching that dragonfly, I want to mention a question from Mrs. McIntosh's class at Preston High School. The ACE class put together some questions. How long have dragonflies existed? How long do dragonflies live? And what does a damselfly nymph do?
Oh my goodness. So lots of questions there. Dragonflies have been around since before dinosaurs. So they were one of the first land forms, land animals on land. So life on Earth started in the water, and then we got some stuff on land, and we had giant dragonflies flying around like 300 million years ago before dinosaurs. So they've been around a long time, and I think, maybe I'm going to make something up here, but I think they were like a meter wide, that their wingspan was like a meter wide in the early days.
Fantastic. Now, speaking of these amazing creatures, I'm reminded that we had a question for students about how many legs a decapod has. Do you remember the answer to that question, Sean?
Well, if you think of, well, pod means foot, so deca, if you think about the words that have DEC in them, like decade or decimal, you're thinking about things in groups of 10. So decapods have 10 legs.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Sean. All right. So I'd like to ask a question of Levi. What do you have on our list here, and how are we doing with our abundance or diversity survey?
We're doing really well so far. I think we've got about half of what we're looking for, maybe a little less. Actually, Sean, with that in mind, did you get a damselfly?
I saw a damselfly in my net. I have not, it's very well camouflaged. I have not yet found it to be able to show the camera.
I will leave that as a question mark for now, but I'm sure we will get one. Anything else of note?
I'm just looking in a net here. I think I've got something good. It's kind of exciting here. I'm not exactly sure what it is. Maybe you can, oh my goodness, it just jumped out. What is that? What is that? Tell us in the chat if you know what kind of animal that is. You get a gold star if you can name what kind it is. It's got very good camouflage. Can you get any closer there on the camera? You'll see it even better here if I give it a little poke on the rear end. Oh, he's a little bit scared. This is a leopard frog. That's a great animal. A lot of students wanted to know about leopard frogs and about other animals. I think leopard frog was featured in Sean's song. I'm gonna put this frog, maybe I'll let him hop back down to the pond, back to his habitat. That's exciting. Make sure we check off leopard frog. Now, speaking of frogs, this might be a question for Al because he knows this place best. Cheyenne at Cortland Public School wants to know, have you ever seen a tree frog at this pond?
I have not seen tree frogs at this pond. They are around the pond. I've heard them singing, but I haven't seen them. They're incredibly difficult to find. I have been to areas where I can hear them. I know they're right there where I'm pointing, and I haven't been able to see them with my eyes. So I've seen tree frogs before, but not around this pond. They're just very, very difficult to find. And you have to be sort of at the right place at the right time. You have to be the time of year where they're singing. The boys are trying to attract a girl with their voice, and then you have to be able to find it visually. They have the ability to change color, so that camouflage factor is enormous for their survival. Even though you might know exactly where they are, it's still very difficult to locate them.
Fantastic. Now, I want to bring the camera back to the action desk here. Touching on that leopard frog. And it looks like Levi's got something amazing in this little cup here.
Now, this is a perfect segue. This is probably the star of the show, I think. This is a tadpole, obviously. This is the young phase of the frog that we saw earlier. Frogs have 3 life stages: egg, tadpole, and then adult. What's fascinating about this is that the 2 life stages, tadpole and adult, have different niches. The tadpole is a herbivore. It only eats plants. As an adult, it's a carnivore. It basically only eats other animals, like other invertebrates rather. I'm going to take this guy out again so we can take a closer look.
Grade 4s in Mrs. Clark's class at Alpine Public School want to know, do tadpoles need to breathe out of the water? How do tadpoles breathe underwater?
Oh, those are excellent questions as well. So they do need to breathe. Tadpoles have gills, and there's a little hole right on the side of their body where the water enters their body and enters the gill. The gill, like our lungs, is inside their body cavity. So this little hole, or also called a spiracle, is where the tadpole breathes through. As Adults, they also breathe, but they breathe directly through their skin. And much like the turtle that Al was talking about earlier, they have thin skin, so oxygen is able to dissolve right through their skin directly into their blood. Right? Tadpoles are able to do this as well, but they need to be in the water for this to happen. As adults, the frogs secrete mucus that covers their body that allows for that diffusion to happen into their blood.
Levi, you just put that tadpole into a tray, and I see something long and skinny swimming around in there. What is that creepy crawly thing?
Yeah, this is my favorite thing in the pond. This is the leech, and a lot of people are kind of concerned about leeches. I don't think you need to be. It's very rare that a leech will latch onto you and suck your blood if you're picking it up with your hands. In fact, the skin on your hand is so thick that a leech like this can't bite through the thick skin that I have in my hand. You might get a leech if you're swimming in the water that will latch onto the underside of your foot or behind your knee where the skin on your body is a little bit thinner. But you can see that this leech is not interested in sucking my blood. It's looping, that's the word we use for this type of locomotion, across my hand.
Are you talking about that little inchworm crawl?
This inchworm crawl, yeah.
Looping.
The technical term for that is looping.
It's so cute.
I love it. Now this is a special type of leech. This is a medicinal leech, and it's going to be kind of tricky for you to see this, but on the underside it is this deep orange, and on the top it is this forest green. And I love that color combination.
So if you're watching at a computer, we want to hear from you in the chat. What do you think about this leech? Did you learn something new about leeches? How do you feel about this little guy? Yeah, let's go see what you got, Al. What is it?
I got a couple things. All right, first of all, there's a predaceous diving beetle that's flipping around in my hand. It uses 2 long legs for rowing through the water. The other 4 are tucked up against its body when it swims. A very fierce predator in the pond. That's a beetle that has a line down the center of the back. Levi, predaceous diving beetle. This one here is a lesser water bug. So it's not a beetle, it's actually a true bug. True bugs have an X shape across their back where the wings fold over. That's also a predator. That's cool. Lesser water bug.
Madame Jones's class, who are distance learners, they want to know, how do bugs in the pond breathe underwater?
This particular one has a snorkel. The water scorpion is a true bug also. It uses a snorkel system. The predaceous diving beetle attaches a bubble of air to its body. Sometimes under the wing covers, which we would call the shell. Under the wing covers, it traps a bubble of air and it breathes like a scuba tank. So there's a scuba tank system, there's a snorkel system, depending on the insect. I caught a damselfly. Do I win? Ah! There's a damselfly right there, a very close relative of the dragonfly. Sean mentioned that the gills of a young dragonfly are inside the body. The damselfly has the gills on the outside of the body. These little paddle things at the back of the body are the gills. But even with all these 3 cool animals that I just found, that's not the coolest thing I caught. Hang on. Check this out.
Al, that's a plant.
Yeah, that's the coolest thing going. I know Levi said the tadpole was the star of the show. Completely disagree. This is a plant that eats animals. This is a carnivorous plant. If you see these little dark pockets on the leaves of this plant is called bladderwort, and these little dark pockets are called bladders. What happens is microscopic living things, tiny living things go floating by. These little bladders, they open up and they suck in that little microscopic, that small living thing, and then because these don't have any roots, they can't get nutrients from the ground. They get energy from the sun because they can create their own food in the form of sugar, but they can't get the nutrients they need to survive. So they use the nutrients within the animal. When the plant digests the animal, it absorbs their nutrients, the animal's nutrients, in order to get what it needs. This is one of 3 carnivorous plants in Ontario. Sundew, my friend bladderwort, and then one called pitcher plant. So I personally think this is the star of the show. Sorry everyone, but that's an amazing plant and one of my favorite living things to find in the pond.
Fantastic, thank you, Al. Now I want to bring us over to the action desk again because I'd really like to find out if we have any other amphibians. I know people are excited about tadpoles and frogs. Do you have any other amphibians to show us, Levi?
We don't. We didn't catch one.
Oh, that's too bad. What kind of amphibians might live here?
Yeah, I think the one that you're thinking of is the eastern red-spotted newt, and it's a large newt, looks sort of like a lizard, it's more related to salamanders really than anything, probably be about the length of my hand when it's fully grown. It has 3 life stages. It has the egg stage, it has a larval stage. Instead of calling them tadpoles, we call them efts. And then as an adult, they look like the regular salamander or lizard. They're poisonous, so never eat one, but you can touch them, you can handle them, and you're not going to get sick or anything like that.
Fantastic. We should also mention, if we want to handle an amphibian, is there anything that we should do to make sure we keep that animal safe?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. We have oils and salt on our skin, and so if you're handling an amphibian, be it a salamander, be it a newt, be it a frog, those salts are going to suck some of that moisture, some of that mucus off the frog or the amphibian skin and harm it, maybe making it difficult for it to breathe. So we definitely should wash our hands, at least in pond water, before we handle any type of amphibian.
Fantastic. Thank you, Levi. Well, I think that about wraps up the pond animal catching portion of our live broadcast. So I just want to check in with our list here to see kind of how much diversity we were able to find. This is a great opportunity. If you have an activity sheet or a list at school or at home, you can take a look and see if you were able to check off or circle these things. We did not show every single one of these things on camera, but we were checking off along the way as we were finding them.
We checked in with Sean while you were on camera. We added a few things that he caught. Do you have anything you want to add to this list?
That's a good list. I did catch a spotted diving beetle
All right, let's add
and
that.
a whirligig beetle.
All right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. 23 species today in 45 minutes.
Amazing, fantastic. I think our educators deserve a round of applause for that great list. And now it's time for a little something hosted by Joe Bell at the moderator table. We have a panel of experts here, and Dave, pan over to Joe.
Well, hello everyone, hello. So Joe Bell here, supporting the outdoor education team. They have done a fantastic job, and I'm also joined with my helper today, and my helper is... Hello there everybody, I'm Tommy the Turtle, and I've come across from the other big pond to help out today. Well, thank you, Tommy. Thank you. So I have a great question to ask today, and I'm going to thank from Clemens Mills Public School, Miss Anad, and I have I believe it's Lily, is asking a really good question. Since the world is going through climate change, how will this specifically affect swamps and other wetlands? And I'm going to turn that over to somebody on the panel.
All right. So, the thing that pops into my head is with climate change, we could see a lot more rain in certain places, and in order for that water to be filtered for us, to be kind of limited so it doesn't all run into our streams and rivers and flood, we need more wetlands. We are going to require more places for water to go in a lot of places, because as the earth heats up, you're going to see more evaporation into the atmosphere. When you have more water in the atmosphere, it's got to come down someplace, and if it's just running off our roads, down our drains, straight into the river, we're looking at more flooding in the future. We need more wetlands to be able to slow down the water getting into our system. That's what pops into my head right off the bat there. I don't know.
Well, we certainly have drier conditions that can happen where wetlands and other bodies, small bodies of water could dry up, reducing the amount of habitat that's available for lots of our living things that we saw today.
Yeah. I'm going to reiterate what Sean said. I think on our part, preserving ponds like this and wetlands are a key part of what you'd call our climate resilience. We need to have these bodies of water to help moderate large temperature fluctuations, not just here, but all over the world. So preserving our wetlands is a big part of one of the things we can do to mitigate the impacts of climate change.
Fantastic. I'm just going to chime in there with an activity you can do in the classroom or at home. An analogy for a wetland is a sponge. So that cattail out there and lots of the other pond plants help to absorb and hold on to water during a flood event. And so in the classroom or at home, if you take a sponge and you take a liter of water and you have 2 trays and you put the trays on an angle, and you pour water into an empty tray and then pour the same amount of water into a tray that's got a sponge in it. Maybe you can use some dirt in the water or some food coloring to add a little bit of visibility. You'll get to see how wetlands, like a sponge, soak up water and prevent flooding and erosion during the spring melt season.
Well, hello everyone. I have another great question, and I think my friend Tommy the Turtle here is going to possibly like the answer to this question. And it's coming to us from Arvin in the Distance Learning Program Kindergarten, and it's a great question. What is the biggest predator in the pond?
My answer would be the great blue heron. Now, that's not necessarily an aquatic animal, but it is a predator that loves to eat fish and frogs. Do you guys have another answer?
Yeah. So Tommy the Turtle will like this one, but I would say the largest predator is the snapping turtle. Snapping turtles can get really big. They can be really heavy. They move really quickly. They have that really long neck. Their neck is as long as their shell, so they've got huge reach. Big, hard, keratinous beak. They're like the wolves of the underwater ecosystem. So my vote would be with the snapping turtle.
Can I add something? I fell in once. Does that count? Maybe, I don't know. Shout out to Mr. Lloyd's class.
All right. So we've got time for one more question from moderator Joe and Tommy the Turtle.
Well, come on in here, Dave Pope, and please focus on Tommy. Oh, Tommy the Turtle, so glad to hear that I'm one of the big guys in the pond. This is wonderful, wonderful news. I've come all the way from the other big pond into this pond. Awesome. Thank you, Tommy. Our last question for our panel today is a great question because each panelist will get to respond. And it's coming to you from Aisha, from Elizabeth Ziegler. What is the most interesting thing you have caught in the pond? Thank you.
That's a very good question. The most interesting thing that I've caught in the pond. Well, I'm sorry to say this. I don't think Tommy the Turtle will like this very much. But once I was fishing at the pond and I actually found a snapping turtle right up by the edge. Now, snapping turtles and turtles in general, if they're on a log or at the edge of the pond, they typically stretch out their neck as far as they can so that they can bask in that warm sunlight. But instead of in that posture, this turtle was sort of doing a dead man's float. And so I took my net and I took a look, and it turned out it had in fact died. So I pulled it out of the water. A grade 4 class was with me. This was a couple years ago, so those students are probably in grade 6 this year, possibly grade 7. And it turns out that snapping turtle had in its mouth a large fish hook. Now, the largest cause of turtle mortality is being hit on the road, but I found this was a very interesting and a little bit sad thing to find in the pond.
All right, yeah. Snapping turtle probably would have been on my list as well. Next on my list would be the Jefferson's salamander. So I've really had a soft spot for amphibians my whole life. I go out regularly looking for amphibians. I was out with my daughter. We were catching things in the pond close to Wrigley Corners, and we pulled up the net, and inside, wriggling, was this huge, like the biggest salamander I'd ever seen. And of course, that is the Jefferson salamander. It's the second largest amphibian in Ontario. I was super excited, and I was gushing with my daughter because it's an endangered species. They're listed as threatened in Ontario and threatened in Canada. So to find one and to be able to hold one was a really special moment, and I was just so happy that I could share that with my daughter.
You're looking at it. I got to go back to my original bladderwort. It's probably my favorite thing in the pond. If we're talking animals, the caddisfly larva is dear to my heart. The water scorpion is dear to my heart. But you know, a plant that eats animals, that's tough to beat.
Fantastic. I think we're going to save that question for Sean for just a few seconds because before we go to Sean with that question, I want to mention, if you haven't seen our Monster Trees program, it's a fantastic opportunity for citizen science. You've found the pond live stream, so if you just go back to the outdoor education page, you'll see in the menu bar a link for Monster Trees. It's an opportunity for students in the schoolyard or at parks or neighborhood trees to go outside to measure trees and help us find the largest trees in Waterloo region. We're going to be doing another live stream on October 30th, Friday, so a week from today. And so we hope you tune into that as well. We're going to be on location from the largest tree in Waterloo region as reported by students in our school board. Since you're on the YouTube site right now, we want to encourage you to subscribe to our channel. We're aiming for 1,000 subscribers, so you can help us out a lot by hitting that subscribe button today. And without further ado, we want to pose that question to Sean. Sean, what is the most interesting thing you've ever found in the pond?
Well, my pond at Laurel Creek is not beside a forest, and so I never see newts in a pond. But one time at Laurel Creek, maybe 10 years ago, a student scooped out 2 newts at the same time in one net. That is the only time I've ever seen newts at Laurel Creek, so that was the most exciting thing for me, and I was hoping we would have caught one today, but maybe next time. All right, so earlier this week, I sang a song about animals that live in the ponds. We put it on our webpage, and then we challenged students to write their own lyrics. And we weren't sure really how many we get for this, but we got over 150. And I've looked at them all. I tried singing every single one of them, and some of them worked pretty well, and some of them I just didn't get the words out right. So I picked out a few of them here, and I'm gonna sing some of those lyrics you guys stand in. So here we go. Wish I was stickleback fish, swim around the pond wherever I wish, give my tail a little swish. Wish I was stickleback fish. Wish I was a giant horse leech, I go swimming at the beach, bite some people, make them screech. Wish I was a giant horse leech. Wish I was a largemouth bass, swimming through the water grass, eating prey with a lot of mass. Wish I was a largemouth bass. Wish I was a common loon, I'd relax in the afternoon, I'd stare into the moon. Wish I was a common loon. Wish I was a ringneck snake, slithering, sliding round the lake, mildly venomous, won't make you shake. Wish I was a ringneck snake. Wish I was a nematode worm, live my life as an ectotherm, to hunt for food I'd wiggle and squirm. Wish I was a nematode worm. Wish I was a rough-skinned newt, body tough as rubber boots, spraying toxins at the roots. Wish I was a rough-skinned newt. Wish I was a back swimmer, swim around and catch my dinner. I'm upside down, I'm a winner. Wish I was a back swimmer. Wish I was a water boatman in the pond, I'd be floating in class, I'd be floating. Wish I was a water boatman. Wish I was a mosquito, flying like a torpedo, buzzing like Despacito. Wish I was a mosquito. Wish I was stickleback fish, swim around the pond wherever I wish, give my tail a little swish. Wish I was a stickleback fish. All right, good job everyone. Woo! See you at the next one.